humanitarian Caesar of the UN, welcome back to Beirut. After a few days in Syria, you talked about despair, loss, but also about courage and maybe, let's say, courage. How can we build on this courage to build a new Syria?
So it's a moment of hope, for sure, but it's also a moment of some caution as well. I'm an optimist, as you know, but I also want to be realistic. And the task ahead of the Syrian people is huge. I drove from Beirut all the way up to the Turkish border and went through Damascus, Aleppo, Homs, Idlib. So I've seen on the ground the destruction, but also talking to the new government, including Ahmed al-Shara, the leader of that new government. I'm very conscious of the challenges that lie ahead in terms of rebuilding the infrastructure and bringing the country together. So, I talked to a lot of Syrian people along the way, and there is an optimism, but they're also waiting and watching. And in particular, they're waiting and watching to make sure that women and girls are given a really important role, crucial role in the future of Syria. They're crucial to our work as humanitarians, but more importantly, they're crucial to Syria's future.
Did you discuss this issue with the new Syrian authorities as girls and women role in this humanitarian issue?
Absolutely. I discussed it in every meeting with the authorities. And I said, these are not just words that we say. This is one of the ways that we will test the potential for the partnership. Will this be an inclusive country, bringing everyone together again? And will it be a place where women and girls feel they have a future?
And what did you hear? What's the most pressing issue Syrians were talking about?
So a lot of those who are displaced are talking about how they need food, water, and power. And what they said to me was, if we have those three things, we will go back to being the most generous, compassionate people here. We will deliver for other countries in the region. But those are the three essential things. The other big need that I observed was, for many of them, they're trying to go back to their old land, and there are lots of unexploded munitions. So they need those munitions cleared so that it's safe for them to go home and rebuild their lives.
And with discussions with officials, did you notice any shift in their willingness to cooperate with the UN?
Definitely. So under the last regime, we had lots of issues around permits and visas and permissions to deliver humanitarian aid to the Syrian people who need it so badly. It was very clear in these conversations that the caretaker administration is very keen to remove any obstacles to our work, and I received that assurance from the very top. I also received very clear assurances on the way that we can use all the border crossings to get in as much aid as possible, which to us is essential. We need to use all of those different frontier points because the need is spread across Syria, and of course the need is also in Lebanon.
U.S. Undersecretary Leaf didn't seem in a rush to lift sanctions against Syria. Does it sanctions obstruct the work of the humanitarian operations in Syria?
So we're still able to get the essential humanitarian supplies through, but there is also a big need to rebuild Syria and to bring back people's confidence and their livelihoods. And so sanctions do impede much of that work.
Reconstruction.
And reconstruction. So my hope is that we can make the practical steps that we need to make in order that the case can be made for lifting those sanctions, for reducing those sanctions. As I heard someone say, the real cause of those sanctions is no longer in Syria, he's in Moscow.
But also they have sanctions on the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham as well.
Significant ones. And the key will be, are the conditions in place for us to deliver the aid? Is there an inclusive government? Can we have confidence as the international community that there is a genuine partner there with the interests of the Syrian people at the core of the agenda?
Do you have an assessment of the current humanitarian needs in Syria now, after the visit?
Massive.
in size and
Massive. So 7 in 10 people need support, and that need won't go away. You know, it is a moment of hope and change, but actually the numbers in need are as great as ever. And we also have, as you know, huge numbers on the move.
yes.
You know, when I was at the crossing at Masna, I saw huge numbers of Syrians returning home, but then there are also other displaced people moving in other directions. And so that makes it much more complex, much more complicated to do our job.
As we're talking about this move, what will be the fate of Syrians refugees in Beirut, in Lebanon?
So the Lebanese people have been amazingly generous. You know, I remember being here 12 years ago and saying to people, you need to find this level of generosity, and they did. But no one expected it to last so long. And so that generosity has been tough to give. And I don't underestimate how tough that period has been. The Lebanese people are the biggest donors here, bigger than the international community because of that welcome that they've given to Syrian refugees. And now I know from talking to so many Syrians that they want to go back. They want to rebuild their lives. They want to go home to their own towns, their own communities. But in many cases, the dangers are still there. The landmines are still there. The infrastructure isn't there. Their homes have often been destroyed.
But the regime is not there anymore.
But the regime is not there anymore. So it will take time, and a lot will depend on where they're from. The key thing is that they should be given the support to go back when it is safe for them to do so. I've had these conversations in Turkey as well. I'm going to Jordan tomorrow. You know, many of Syria's neighbours have been really absorbing a huge burden here. And of course, there are many displaced Syrians within Syria. And it's our collective job to make conditions right for them to go home safely and rebuild their lives as they want to do.
Until then, the refugees will benefit from let's say the benefits that they have. They will still got it until now.
Well, I mean, we still have a mission, a duty to support all those in need that we can help, and those are Lebanese and Syrian communities. For me, it's always been important that Lebanese host communities are also benefiting because they are showing such generosity to Syrian refugees as well. You know, as I say, I think all the Syrians I've met are very keen to go back, but they're just trying to get the conditions right for it to be safe for them to do so, you know, because that's where they see their future.
And with all what's happening in Syria now and the huge demands that Syria is, the needs that Syria demands now, will Lebanon be a forgotten front for the UN?
It mustn't be forgotten. You know, I've never stopped believing in Lebanon. I was always very idealistic and optimistic about Lebanon's future. Maybe too idealistic and optimistic, but I'm still buying shares in Lebanon for the future. And we have a duty and obligation as the international community to recognize what Lebanon has gone through. Not just the recent conflict, which has been terrible, and I've been in the south today and seen the devastation of villages and communities and hospitals and schools, but also the financial crash, the Beirut port explosion, years of political paralysis, and years of hosting Syrian refugees and Palestinian refugees.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really tough combination of factors. And so the needs here are significant. And we need to keep Lebanon in the eye of international attention and ensure they get the funding that is needed.
It's the job of the UN, it's a promise.
It's both. It's both. It's my job to ensure that communities in need do get the support they need. But it's also a promise that because I recognize the scale of the needs here in Lebanon, which are severe and growing, that we must get that support through. Now, it's a difficult funding environment for me at the moment, for the international community. The donors are not as generous as they were. Many governments, many countries are turning inwards now. Many are saying we have to deal with our own problems.
And with the many crises we have, Sudan, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria.
A proliferation of crises globally. I'm also dealing with Ukraine, Afghanistan. I've spent over a week in Sudan since starting. Multiple crises, and the conflicts are lasting longer and they're more ferocious. And we're finding it harder to end the conflicts. So that makes it a very difficult funding environment. I'm trying to raise money right now, $47 billion, for 190 million people in need globally. But that includes millions here in Lebanon and, of course, in Syria as well.
Thank you. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. I'll need it. Everyone tells me this is the most impossible job in the world. I think there are harder jobs, including yours. But it's a mission, and I'm energized by the fact that we have so many extraordinary humanitarians out there who are doing this great work. As I saw today in the south of Lebanon, I met the doctors and the nurses and the teachers who all the way through that bombardment, when anyone else would have left, they were going back. They stayed and they stayed and they stayed, and they faced all that danger in order to deliver that humanitarian mission. That's a much harder job than my one.
You are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.